Hoping everybody can see my screen correctly. Again, my name is Dr. Maria Pertelis-Romito. I teach a variety of classes, not only disaster preparedness, but also closing up your Florida home. I do food preservation with preserving food through dehydration, water bath canning, pressure canning, as well as a series of age-friendly classes, healthy eating and hydration, fall prevention and health management and home design, and several others dealing with bone health and the risk of osteoporosis and so forth. Thank you for joining me today with this class. And I am on my own, so if I pause a moment to allow people in, please excuse me. So we do teach a variety of, we do have a variety of programs in our office, from ag to lawn and garden, natural resources. This program falls under nutrition and healthy living and youth development. The University of Florida is an equal opportunity institution. And we know that hurricane season has already begun, and it's really, in one respect, we're fortunate. Most of the storms have been tropical storms, but we've already made it through dawn. So it begins June 1st and it runs all the way through November 30th. Here's some things that we will be covering today. Some names for the 2023 season, some basic terminology and wind scale, preparing for a disaster, specifically hurricanes, gathering information, creating a plan, assembling a kit, how to avoid fraud, whether we are in any type of disaster or post-disaster event or not. We all need to learn how to avoid fraud. Food safety and sanitation options, purifying drinking water, sheltering in place versus an evacuation center, or perhaps evacuating to a neighbor or friend nearby, and post-disaster precautions. I will be sending out an evaluation at the end, and there's a lot of notes with this class, so please sit back. I will send you all of the fact sheets that go along with this class. I have them both in English as well as Spanish. If you would please, you could go down to the chat box. You can find my email address as mjpromito@ufl.edu. You could private chat me your email address. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can also email me as well with the same address. So the first week is on us. They used to be 3 days, but now they're saying it's the first 7 days that we need to be self-sufficient and on our own, right? Because it takes a while for emergency responders they could be delayed. They could be delayed for several reasons. One, wind speeds, also debris on the ground. So those vehicles and trucks, semi-trucks, need to be safe before they can take onto the road. So remember, it only takes one, and every storm is different. So hurricane season is a marathon. It is not a sprint. It is a long, lingering 6 months. So there are all types of disasters that we need to consider, not just hurricanes, but also lightning. We know that the Tampa Bay region is the lightning capital of our country. Tornadoes, and we know that tornadoes are spawned in hurricanes. Flooding can occur in hurricanes, and you don't even need a hurricane to experience a flooding event. Look at Vermont last week and the devastation they had. Fire, earthquakes, and we will particularly pay attention to hurricanes. So your chances of being struck by lightning do greatly increase when remaining outdoors. And I bring this in just as a precaution that if you are golfing or boating, running, walking, Doing any outside activity, remember when it roars, you need to get yourself indoors. Here are the list of our 2023 Atlantic hurricane names. And like I said, we have already made it through Don. Don is swirling around in the Atlantic with nowhere to go, thankfully. And you'll notice that they do go by alphabetical order. After they're, hopefully this won't happen, but if they did make it through the entire list, they would start with fresh names beginning with A all over again. They used to do the Greek alphabet, but they stopped that for this year. So here are just the general predictions, and these numbers do change as the season progresses, but you could see the difference between the storms that we had in 2022. 14 named storms, where our prediction this year is somewhere between 11 and 15. Pretty much in the same place with predictions as we were last year. So what is the difference between a hurricane watch versus a hurricane warning? Both are with sustained winds of 75 miles an hour or higher, but the hurricane watch is typically issued 48 hours in advance of those anticipated wind speeds. And the hurricane warning is typically issued 36 hours in advance. So when there is a hurricane watch, that's a great time to make sure your shutters are up, that if you have any garbage receptacles, that those are brought into the garage, any outdoor plants or ceramics, anything like that are secured either in your lanai, near a wall, or if you could bring those items, better yet, into your garage, that's also a good thing. And also make sure you have all your groceries. Typically with that hurricane watch, although before the storm, a storm even hits, it's always a good idea to have your pantry stocked and plenty of water. And we'll be getting into that in a little bit. So here is the wind scale, and you'll notice that there are different categories, and I know everybody's familiar with these, but category 4 and 5, it's going to do catastrophic damage. And we need to pay attention not just to the wind speed, but also the storm surge from the water. Remember, we always want to hide from the wind, but we want to run from the water. And category 4 and category 5 will bring devastating flooding as well. And we look at Hurricane Ian and what that brought to southern Sarasota and down in, oh my gosh, I'm having a senior moment, down in Naples in that area. So where do we start? Well, you're starting in a great place, taking advantage of this webinar. But remember, we need to gather all our information to make sure we're creating a plan that's good for our family, assembling our kit and supplies, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, how to stay informed, how to follow food safety guidelines. What do we do when the power goes out and we've lost the ability to keep our foods cold? And knowing your post-disaster risks, because when we create a plan, it ensures that you and your family will not only be prepared, but you'll be prepared physically, mentally, and even emotionally. It'll make you feel better. So what does our kit look like? It might have extra flashlights. I keep a flashlight in every bedroom with an extra set of batteries. I love the lanterns because they light a small area versus just a flashlight that is a beam of light. And of course, plenty of batteries. A 7-day food supply that's high energy, low salt, and non-perishable. A 7-day water supply, which is a gallon of water per person per day, plus water for cooking and washing. I'm often asked, can we fill our bathtubs? Absolutely. There are devices out there called bladders that you could place in your bathtub to fill it up that you can use as drinking water. But if you're going to use your bathtub as water for cooking or for washing, we do recommend that you clean it and sanitize it before you store that water. And a gallon of water per person per day is a lot. If you choose to bring in water from the grocery store in those gallon jugs, I do that, but I bring in like a gallon or two every time I shop, and that way I'm not carrying all that heavy water. And now is a great time to purchase a manual can opener because those do fly off the shelves. And we just need to, again, to be self-reliant for at least 7 days after the storm. So what are shelf-stable foods? They're non-perishable. They do not need cooking or refrigeration. And they're just easy to prepare. And they can be items such as canned foods. And most people think that that's just their only option. But there's also dehydrated foods, dehydrated fruits and vegetables as well. Once open, this can should not require refrigeration. Now, there are some items like canned items that you can open that would be a meal in a can that would require refrigeration. And for those, we suggest perhaps single serving sizes so that you can eat it, enjoy it, and then discard the can. And these might be items that can stay on your countertop. So here is just a guideline, just some suggestions of things that perhaps you can purchase for your kit. And again, don't worry about taking notes. All of this information is in the fact sheets that I would be happy to send out to you. But for dairy, consider canned or powdered milk or shelf-stable puddings. For grains, you might think of wraps or tortillas. Ready-to-eat cereals, especially the little boxes, single-serving size cereals, but those large boxes too. But remember, if you've lost air conditioning, moisture will get into those food items and they can become stale more quickly. Think about instant oatmeals, food bars, even pasta. They do have pasta that's already pre-made, and low sodium crackers. When you think of fruit, think of bananas, although be careful, right? You can go to the grocery store, buy green bananas, and they're already yellow by the time you make it home. So I would keep that to a minimum, but think about raisins or apples. Those are great alternatives. Shelf-stable, 100% fruit juice. And think about trail mixes. And for our vegetables, we can get canned vegetables, but we also can make carrot sticks, maybe canned stew, and low sodium soups. And it sounds easy with the low sodium soups, but you'll really need to spend some time searching and deciding which items to buy when it comes to soups, because soups in general are very high in sodium. Think about your protein foods. A great alternative is the peanut butter or sun butter, which is made with sunflower seeds, nuts, canned beans, refried beans. Think about canned chicken. Think about canned fish like tuna fish, meats, and also chili. And again, these are just some general suggestions. And again, your water, the 7-day water supply of a gallon per person per day, plus if you do have little pets, they need their water too. Think about baby food. Now, if you do have small children, then you'll already be stocked up. But if you have a special dietary requirement, baby foods might be a wonderful alternative. They don't have added sugars nor added salt. I stock, my mother, who's 92, lives with me, and I always keep some baby food in the house just in case. It's a healthier snack item for her. But now is not the time during a storm to go off any special dietary diet. So you need to plan and prepare ahead of time for that. And pets, their food, their treats, don't forget there are any medications, litter, and water. and just some other non-food items or food items like medications, vitamins, instant coffee, teas, and cocoa. And the reason why we put that in there is because many times our coffee, our morning tea, or cocoa is a comfort food. And sometimes we can't function through the day without that cup of coffee or that cup of tea. So we include that as well. Even some sugar for those items and hard candy. So you might also want to consider foods that are rich in protein and nutrient dense to maintain strength and energy. And by nutrient dense, we mean a high amount of nutrients, vitamins, and minerals for the amount of calories that are contained in that product. Single serving sizes are wonderful. Yes, they're more expensive, but again, refrigeration might not be an option if you've lost power. Snack sized or one meal canned food items, instant meals like soup mixes, freeze dried meals. You can get camping or hiking meals, powdered foods that require water for reconstituting, but you want to avoid foods that are high in sugar and sodium, like jerky, chips, crackers, pastries, and so forth. And again, these items, think about yourself when you get stressed or sometimes when you get very tired. What is your go-to? Are you a sugar person that enjoys the ice cream or the chocolate or the cookies? Or are you more the sodium person that enjoys the chips or the pretzels and so forth? Again, all those items, as delicious as they are not nutrient dense, and they just are filled with empty calories and sodium, which will make you even more thirsty. So we always want to avoid leftovers as well. So non-food items to have on that supply list: flashlights and batteries. Again, that manual can opener, but also scissors to open things up. You know, if you've got a pack of batteries, sometimes those packs you can't open with just your fingers, right? You need a knife or scissors to open them up. Disinfected wipes, some cutting boards, and always we recommend 2 cutting boards, one for meats and one for fresh fruits and vegetables. Plastic utensils, and a lot of people cringe because there's so many people out there who are sustainable, but you really don't want to be washing dishes and cups and plates and silverware when your home might be flooded or you're experiencing no power and so forth. So plastic utensils, disposable plates and cups, bowls, food storage bags, and of course those big garbage bags to place those items in. And 2 refrigerator thermometers to measure the temperature of your refrigerator. We know that your refrigerator should be between 35 and 40 and your freezer at 0. If you are using a grill, a charcoal grill, you'll need plenty of charcoal, lighter fluid, and of course matches. So let's talk about, or changing gears to gathering information and what kind of information you should have. First of all, you need enough information to gather that plan that's unique to you and your family. So learn about your community response plans, what your city or county has in place, your evacuation plans, and a designated emergency center. Do you know where your local or where your nearest evacuation center is? Sign up for Alert Sarasota County or Alert in your county. And if you are already receiving silver alerts or amber alerts, you are already signed up. Now's a great time to buy a battery-operated radio. Better yet, if you can purchase a battery-operated weather radio, and those 2 fly off the shelves, as well as that manual can opener. Learn the risks in your area, even in your general community. If you have a downpour, do you know what streets in your area flood easily? You know, if I travel out onto 41, I pretty much know what areas on 41 do flood easier, I should say. And know your evacuation zone and your FEMA flood zone, because your insurance company certainly knows where you are located, and your rates are also based on that location. If you already have a all hazards disaster planning guide from last year or even the year before, keep it, use it. If you can pick up a new one, great. All of our extension offices in the state of Florida have these. Your local library will have them, and I've even seen them in our local grocery stores. They are relatively stay the same each year, but the flood zones might change from year to year. Wonderful information is in these packets. Here are a list of our local our local news stations, as well as our radio stations. And it's not that we don't want you to pay attention to the national news, certainly, but these local stations will tell you exactly what's happening in your immediate area. For example, if a tornado happens to touch down in my area, say Beneva and 41, I'll be told that, and I'll know how close in proximity that is to my home. Where national news will sometimes just place people on the beach and show just generally what is occurring. So pay attention to your local news stations and radio stations. So gathering information could also include checking your insurance coverage. And boy, is that something that we are really paying attention to? And it's really a huge red flag. If you can keep your insurance coverage, or if you're finding a new agent, it's a difficult decision, but know your deductibles. If you have a wind deductible, we all do, make sure you know that percentage. Is it 3%? Is it 5%? That can be a hefty amount out of pocket. That deductible can be a hefty amount out of your pocket to go to pay. If you do decide to purchase flood insurance, that does take 30 days to get started on your home. So if you applied for it today on July 18th, it would not be in effect until August 18th. And remember, we don't need to have a hurricane to have a flooding event, right? People's homes flood for various reasons, and it doesn't actually have to be weather related. Your hose on your washing machine could give way and create flooding in your home. So that's a decision that you would need to make if you would decide to get flood insurance. On a beautiful day like today is a good day to inventory your home possessions. So get your cell phone, put it on video, and go around to each room of your home, videotaping all the walls in the room, its contents. Pay special attention if there are items that are very expensive or very sentimental. But don't forget to go into your garage to include your vehicles, or if you have expensive machinery out there, your lanai, your pool, lanai furniture. Then take some still shots, one on the outside, each 4 sides of your home, of what it looked like on July 18th, especially if you've put on a new roof or an addition, so that you can prove this is what my home looked like prior to the weather event. Gather important papers and documents. I have a wonderful EDIS publication that lists out all of the important documents that you should have placed together. I keep mine in folders, and then I take those folders and I put them in a plastic, a hard plastic accordion pleated folder, so that I can take those with me. But important documents such as home deeds, veteran papers, birth certificates, passports, all the items that, yes, you could replace, but boy, it's going to take you months to finally get them all replaced. Again, if you can type your name or type your email into the chat box, you can receive that document, and it is very helpful. A wallet or purse that has some cash in it, and I'm always asked, how much cash should we take out of the bank? Remember, cash will be golden because there will be no electricity, which means no ATM machines, and no credit card will be able to be used. So that piece of plastic will really be just a piece of plastic. But think about how much money you spend at the grocery store weekly. And then from that amount, think about how much more money you might require. Take a look at your car maintenance. Make sure the gas tank is filled up, because again, you'll lose the ability to get gas if those stations have lost power. Make sure that your tires are filled properly. If you do have a spare tire, is that in working order? And gather a list of licensed and insured contractors, especially today on a beautiful day. Ask your friends and neighbors who they use as a general contractor, a roofer, an electrician, a plumber, and ask those contractors, call them up and ask what they charge today on a beautiful sunny day and not after a storm. You want to complete that family plan by updating your contact information. Include out-of-town contacts, especially if you are sheltering in place. But if you do decide to leave the state or leave the county and go to another county, take along the information of your neighbors, because they will have eyewitness if they are staying to your property, and they'll be able to tell you if your home has sustained any damage. A meeting place, and know the safest place in your home if you are sheltering. Remember, hurricanes spawn tornadoes. So an interior room could be a bathroom without windows. It could be a laundry room without windows, but it's an interior room. And take with you some blankets, pillows. Somebody told me that they had taken a twin-size mattress in the room with them, because you need to protect yourself from flying debris if a tornado did pass into your community. And a meeting place, 2 of them outside of your home, in case that your neighborhood experienced flooding or fire. You know, some of these flooding events are happening within hours, that there's these huge downpours and all of a sudden flooding is occurring. So just talk to other family members. Maybe it's a parking lot, maybe it's a restaurant or a mall, just some place where you know you could meet and know that everybody is safe. Plan for those with special needs. Every county has a medical needs application that you'll need to apply for in advance before a storm. And I'll show you how to do that at the end of the presentation for Sarasota County. And of course, create a plan for pets. If you are taking a pet to a shelter, there is equipment that you'll need to take with you, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But if they are going with you to another county, what items you'll need to take with you. Know your closest shelter, but determine if, when, and where to evacuate. And that's always a difficult call, because sometimes we see people that say, oh, it's just a category 1. I'm going to shelter in place. And then at the last minute, it winds up to be a category 2 or a category 3. We look at Hurricane Charlie, that was coming in as a category 4, ended up coming in as a category 5 at the very end. And it too did devastating damage. So how do we avoid fraud, not only during a disaster event, but any time of the year? Again, gathering that list of licensed insured contractors, ask for references and check them out. And, you know, it's come to my attention that sometimes these contractors are bringing fake and phony licenses and insurances to the property. So, maybe take a picture of that license, of that insurance, and then type in and check out to make sure that they truly are licensed and insured. And it's so sad to have to do all that homework, but fraud does happen. As for references, check them out, obtain written estimates, and get more than one estimate. And that's hard to do during a post-disaster, and you have a tree in the middle of your roof. But remember, if you are not in a a post-disaster situation, getting more than one estimate can be very helpful. Never pay in full before the work begins. Do not pay the final balance until the work is complete and you are completely satisfied. And the huge red flag, never pull a permit for a contractor. That tells you that they are not licensed and insured in your county. And of course, never pay in cash. You always need to leave a paper trail. So don't go getting rid of those checks, not yet. You'll need those checks. And if you ever suspect fraud, you can contact the state of Florida at this hotline, which is the 1-866-966-7226. So never be pressured into signing a contract immediately. And I've had women participate in my webinars where they will say that sometimes people do breathe over their shoulder to get them to sign. And in one instance, she would always say, my husband or my son or my brother needs to read this contract so that even if that wasn't true, there was no brother, son, or husband, that they knew that somebody else was going to be reading through. But get everything in writing, such as the total cost, a detailed list of what that project is going to include, a time schedule, guarantees, and any warranties that that project or product might have. A payment schedule. Never sign a contract that includes blank spaces. If there are blank spaces, make sure you cross them out and initial them or date them. And carefully read any document before signing. So if you if you live alone, having a neighbor or a trusted friend, somebody, read through that document. They might see something that perhaps you missed. And again, here is that hotline if you need to ever use it for any reason. So let's change gears and talk about food safety, because I don't think anything could be worse than having a category 4 or 5, roaring through our state. And now you've eaten food that has been contaminated and you are now experiencing a foodborne illness. So true or false, foodborne illness is not a common occurrence. So think about it. How much do you really see and read about it in the news? Could it really be all that common? Well, it actually is. And the CDC reports that 1 in 6 Americans do get sick from eating contaminated food. And this contaminated food can be in our homes, but it also can be out in restaurants as well. It's estimated that these microorganisms cause about 48 million illnesses per year, 128,000 hospitalizations, and 3,000 deaths per year. So yes, it is something to be aware of. And think about in your own life, if you've ever experienced a foodborne illness, and the difference between a foodborne illness and having the flu. The flu, you might feel feverish, you might feel very tired a day or two before it actually hits. Where foodborne illness, you could be sitting on the couch enjoying some TV, and all of a sudden you're feeling the need to get to the restroom as soon as possible. And remember, foodborne illness, it doesn't necessarily mean food that you ate 24 or even 12 hours ago. Some food pathogens can take up to a week to 10 days in your gut germinating before you're going to feel those effects. So if you ever did feel or ever feel that you had a foodborne illness, did you report it? Did you go to the doctor? Because if you did, and that doctor then would need to report that illness, that foodborne illness, to the your Department of Health. So that number of 1 in 6 could be 1 in 5 Americans actually get sick from eating contaminated food. And the thing about a food pathogen, it does not discriminate in any shape or form, whether it's the skin of our color or the age, right? It will attack the very, very young to the very, very old. Pregnant, if you have an autoimmune disease, those populations are even more vulnerable. So always our first line of defense is washing our hands whenever we go to prepare food and eat food. And when we talk about washing our hands, it is 20 seconds of rubbing our hands together with warm soapy water, singing the happy birthday song twice, then drying our hands off with a clean paper towel or a clean towel. Now let's talk about another way that we should be considering to resist a foodborne pathogen is our water. Especially if we don't want to go to the store and purchase a gallon of water per person per day. Say we want to just store water that we are, or in containers we already have. So those containers do need to be stored in sanitized food grade containers. So you can't just take any old container and sanitize it. It does have to be a food grade type of container. You always want to wash it with warm soap and water or hot soap and water and sanitize it with a teaspoon of non-scented household bleach, just a teaspoon, to 4 cups or a quart of water. And I have found whenever I mention the use of bleach, many times people just indiscriminately pour it in whatever. You don't need a lot of bleach here to sanitize a container or containers. You want to rinse that container thoroughly, but you never want to use older milk cartons or just milk cartons, even though they're food grade containers, as water to store your water. You'll never get rid of the residue of fat, and that will spoil, and you will have the development of a food pathogen. So if you would like to use those containers of water from last year, remember water does have expiration dates. So you'll need to discard that water once it's past that expiration date. Use it to water your plants, or if you still iron, maybe you can use that on your iron. But you want to discard that water and sanitize that container, and then you can go ahead and just add water from your tap. If you are out and about some days and all of a sudden you get an alert from your county to boil your water, and again, it could happen because there's so much construction going on and a worker accidentally hits a water main, and now we need to boil our water. So you boil continuously, nice, full rolling boil for 3 to 4 minutes. That will kill all the germs, but it does leave the water very flat if you're going to drink that water. So you'll want to pour that water back and forth from 2 separate containers, forcing that air molecules into the water molecules. It improves the flavor. It's not as good as fresh water, but it does improve the flavor. Things you should never do if you know your water is unsafe. You never want to drink it, wash or clean dishes or utensils or toys with that water. Never bathe in the water unless you know it's safe. We have a lot of orifices in our body. It doesn't take much for a pathogen to enter in through our ears or our nose. Cook with the water unless you know it's safe. Never brush your teeth with the water unless you know it's safe. That's where you can use your bottled water and use water to make ice. unless you know it's safe. So that brings us to the question, your ice maker has been making ice while you're gone. So you'll need to take that ice maker, turn it off, take that ice container out, wash it, sanitize it, and put it back in its place. Wait till you get the all clear that your water is now safe. Flush all the water out of your faucets, whether it's your kitchen faucets, some showers, for about a minute or so. Then go to your refrigerator and turn that water back on. You should be safe. And of course, sign up for the alert in your county for important updates. So if your home has been damaged and there's water intrusion, you're going to need to disinfect. And it might not be as bad as this, but it could be, and it certainly was for those that experienced Hurricane Ian. So there are sanitation proportions that we should follow. And this, again, this is for severe water damage. But a gallon of water would take 5 tablespoons or about a 1/3 cup of that unscented bleach. That's a huge amount. So let's bring it down to a quart of water or 4 cups of water to 4 teaspoons of bleach. Now the solution will maintain its integrity for about 24 hours, so you'll need to label it and date it and the time that you created it so that you can discard it after that 24-hour time period. Now there are some people that are really opposed of using bleach, and there are some other options, right? We can take either distilled white vinegar or hydrogen peroxide. We can warm that solution, just warm it, not hot. Funnel that into some type of a spray bottle, and you can use those solutions, either the vinegar or the hydrogen peroxide, on surfaces and countertops and so forth, but you need to let it set for a minute before you wipe it clean. Now, if you do decide to use distilled white vinegar, it needs to be or have 5% acidity. And that information is located on the label. It's in very small print, and sometimes it's in the back of that label. You don't even need to get the boutique brand vinegar, just a generic brand vinegar, but you never want to mix the vinegar and hydrogen peroxide thinking you're creating a stronger solution. If you don't want to heat it, say you're just tired and you just want to use the vinegar or the hydrogen peroxide, you can. That's an option. But of course, now that solution needs to sit on the surface for 10 minutes before you wipe it clean with a paper towel. Now, both sanitizing solutions, both distilled vinegar and hydrogen peroxide, when they're heated, they are going to produce a pretty unpleasant odor. It's not harmful, but it is unpleasant. And you always want to test that sanitizer in an unseen place, especially with hydrogen peroxide, because it can discolor or fade a surface. Again, never mix hydrogen peroxide and vinegar together. Never mix bleach and ammonia together. It too will send you to the hospital. So what should you sanitize regularly? And this is very quickly, but just some general items, refrigerator handle, something we're always touching, everybody in our house touches. Our sinks, including our taps, our bathrooms, and replace those hand towels in your bathrooms daily. But think about your electronics, your computer and your mouse, your keyboard, your cell phones and tablets, just any high traffic surfaces and doorknobs, and even that TV remote. So now let's switch gears to food safety and food. So my refrigerator is set at 41 degrees. So I know my foods are safe to eat. True or false? Well, we said that your refrigerator should always be set between 35 and 40, and your freezer set at 0. So keeping that food thermometer in both your refrigerator and freezer, and if you have a snack drawer, you might want to keep it in the snack drawer as well. Don't do what's in this picture. This picture drives me crazy. If I put a thermometer out in front like that, it would have been broken the first 10 minutes it was placed there by everybody knocking it over and out and so forth. I place my thermometers in the back of the fridge, in the bottom of the freezer, just in inconspicuous places. So if you do lose power, keep that refrigerator door closed as much as possible. And if your home is like my home, and I tell my family members, please don't open the refrigerator. What's the first thing everybody sneaks to do? Is they open the refrigerator because somehow there's a sense of security knowing what's in there. But your refrigerator will only last cold 2 to 4 hours. So you have a very short window. And your freezer, if it is full, 48 hours, and if it's half full, 24. So you need to keep that thermometer in both your refrigerator and your freezer. With the thermometer, we know that food is safe to consume if the freezer temperature stays 40 degrees or lower. The food can be refrozen. If there's no thermometer, but you still are seeing ice crystals, the food is ready to consume, or you can refreeze, but you can't rely on just appearance or odor. So how do we prepare for an outage? First, when we see that cone of opportunity that is coming towards our state of Florida, that's a good time to take your refrigerator that might be set at 40 degrees, take it to 39 degrees. Then the next day, take it down another degree to 38. And as that storm or that window of opportunity approaches, continue to drop that refrigerator temperature maybe to 34 or 35 degrees. Take any meat, poultry. I even take ketchup. I'll take mustard containers, cheeses, hard cheeses, and I'll freeze those. Anything to fill my freezer that might have been half full to get it as full as possible. And then also think about freezing a plastic water or two, those plastic water containers. Open them up to take out a little bit of the water, because when that water freezes in the container, it will expand. And don't put more than one in the freezer per day. You don't want to overload your refrigerator. So maybe one a day, but again, you're creating a huge ice cube in your refrigerator. And then if you do lose power, you do have cool water to drink as the days go on. But we always want to eat out of our refrigerator first, because again, we have only 2 to 4 hours. But think about that. If you lose power during the night, and you might be sleeping, if you can sleep during the storm, chances are you're not even hungry to be eating, or you might be very stressed during the day where food is even not on your radar. So that 2 to 4 hours could pass very easily without you even noticing it. Then you'll want to go to your freezer. There you have those 2 to 4 days if the door remains closed and if your freezer is full. Then you head out to your pantry for those non-perishable food items. So refrigerator first. Refrigerator first. Second, our freezer. And third, our non-perishables. We want to always assess our food and food preparation areas, especially if we have experienced water intrusion. Assess your equipment and decide what you're keeping and what you're throwing away, because when in doubt, we always want to throw it out. Freezing foods will kill harmful bacteria that cause food poisoning. True or false? Well, although freezing does prevent bacteria from multiplying, the only way you're going to kill bacteria is to cook food to its proper internal temperature. So whether we're in a weather event or not, you should always be using a food thermometer. Because in this case, where you see this chicken, it's charcoal, it's golden, it's delicious looking, right? But it's registering at 151 degrees. And we know that for chicken to be cooked properly, it needs to be 165 degrees internally. So always use that food thermometer to measure that cooked internal temperature. Let's switch gears now to evacuation centers, and they should be considered a last resort because I would say 99% of our evacuation centers are schools. But sometimes if there's a mall that's located in a non-flood zone, it could also be a mall as well. But they're not comfortable places. They are not resorts. They are just strictly places to find shelter, to find comfort, and to be with other people while you're going through a storm. Evacuations are called for two reasons. One, for people living in storm surge zones or low-lying areas that are prone to flooding. And two, for people living in mobile homes, RVs, and boats. Remember, first responders are not going to respond to an emergency, for example, for law enforcement, if there's winds 55 miles or higher. And for EMS and fire trucks, sustained winds of 45 miles an hour. You can still call 911 during a hurricane force winds, but you will be able to speak to a call taker, but they will prioritize your phone call. They will talk you through the emergency event. Once the storm has passed, they will be able to come to your home. And think about semi-trucks as well. They are under that 45 mile an hour wind as well. So they are not going to be able to find their way to your community until those winds die down. So should you stay or should you leave? If you determine that your home is not safe then to ride out a storm, perhaps you're living on a barrier island or you are in a storm surge area, and you choose to stay with a friend or leave the area, emergency management agencies suggest staying with two would have shutters. And sometimes it's a home of a friend or a family member. But if your home was built after 2002, you're not in an evacuation level, and you might be more comfortable just sheltering in place. And the University of Florida did a study in 2005 that homes built under the 2002 building code sustained less damage on average than homes built between 1994 and 2001. Now, this standard building code is always addressed each year or every other year. And it's always being updated. So hopefully, if you do decide to leave, now this is not I-75, but remember, hurricanes can strengthen quickly. You need to make the decision to leave well in advance. Remember, if you decide to fly out, planes are grounded well in advance or even taken out of the state in advance of storms. Storm surge flooding can close roads well before a storm even makes landfall. So here is a list of evacuation centers in Sarasota County. If an evacuation center fills up, then you will be directed to another nearby evacuation center. Some of these centers are designated for those that are medically needed. Each person's given 20 square feet. If you are a medically needed person, you have 60 square feet, enough for yourself, the caregiver, and any necessary items. But again, registration is required. They will come to your home and pick you up. well in advance of the storm. And if you are in Sarasota County and you wish to sign up for the medical needs application, you can find that medical needs program. If you are not medically needed, don't have a medical needs program, but you want to take advantage of the transportation, Sarasota County does have different locations where you can meet, and they will pick individuals and families up and take them to a shelter. But again, this is done well in advance before a storm hits. You can apply online, or you can click and print out the form and mail it in. But what do you take to an evacuation center? You want, again, it could be a school or a mall that you're staying at. So sleeping bag, a mat, a pillow, a blanket, some towels, and any personal hygiene items. Extra clothing, because you're going to be there for several days. Batteries, as well as flashlights, medications, perhaps a folding chair. And if you are on a medical need or have a special dietary need, extra snacks. Now, they will feed you, but they're not going to provide snacks for you. Quiet games to occupy your time, and quiet games and toys for children as well. And don't forget those important documents. If you are taking a pet, don't forget their proof of vaccination records, a license, a rabies tag, leash harness, an appropriate crate for their size, your size pet, your pet food, treats, medications, pee-pee pads, water, toys, etc. You are responsible for caring for your pet while in a shelter. And I do volunteer at the shelters. I've done both for the areas of for the general population, and I've also taken care of the pet areas. It's also helpful to bring a blanket to cover the crate. It helps the pet feel more safe and secure, so they don't feel as much anxiety with the situation. So here are some post-disaster precautions that we should pay attention to. First, flooding is a common natural disaster. Don't ever think you can drive through flooded water. You want to turn around and not drown. Never drive around barricades, and know those flood areas in your town. And remember that even 18 to 24 inches of fast-moving water can carry away most large SUVs, vans, and trucks. So you don't need that much moving water to be carried away. You want to supervise your children or other children all the time. Treat intersections with inoperable traffic lights as a four-way stop, which is something I always promote, and yet when I have traveled out, I've noticed few pay attention to that. Never wade in flooded waters because they're contaminated, right, with your neighbor's chemicals and liquids that they might be storing in their garages, but they also might contain fallen power lines and animals. Be aware of debris like alligators, snakes, animals, because they too are driven to higher grounds. They need to survive. And red ants, they will commonly form a floating mat that can lead to hundreds of bites. And by the time you realize what's coming up to you, they're already on top of you. Stay tuned to your local media. Follow social media. Don't use candles. Use that battery-operated lighting. And of course, if you've never used a chainsaw, really think about calling a professional to remove those large uprooted trees. If you are deciding to use a generator, an outdoor generator, you always want to use extreme caution. Generators should be operated 20 feet away from your home. Only operate generators in well-ventilated dry areas, so you'll need some type of a tenting over that generator. And that's why we hear so much where people are like, what? I don't want to store that generator that far away. I'll just put it in my garage. Well, that decision could cost you your life because generators produce carbon monoxide, and we know that that is a frequent killer. And we know that after disaster events where generators are used, we hear of families perishing because they didn't use it properly. But never attempt to refill a hot generator or an operating generator. It has to cool down before you fill it up again. And of course, have a fire extinguisher nearby. And even when you're using grills, use caution. Don't keep that grill that close to your house. And again, having that fire extinguisher nearby. And added this slide in because of what we are experiencing with all this heat, this extreme heat, I should say. So there is heat exhaustion and heat stroke. These are just some general symptoms to pay attention to with heat exhaustion: dizziness, thirst, heavy sweating, nausea, and weakness. If you experience these symptoms, again, move to a cooler area, loosen your clothing. If you can, sip on some cool water, but you will need to seek medical symptoms if this doesn't improve. And of course, heat stroke is even more devastating. You do need to call 911. So just some important takeaways, and I know we are 2 minutes over. Hurricanes can strike any year, even in relatively inactive years. Every storm, regardless of their category, needs to be taken seriously and presents a real threat to life and your property. So don't play that category game. Oh, it's only a category 2. You really need to worry when it's a 4 or 5. You really shouldn't play that game. Do not over-rely on exact forecast track, storm category, or personal experience, because hurricanes and all weather are part of a continuously evolving process. Forecasts can and they do change. So we have to be prepared to be safe. Again, these are the things that we talked about in the class. Just don't be complacent. Today is a great day to start videotaping the interior of your home or gathering that list of licensed and insured contractors. Just get started. Don't wait. Here is a list of all of my resources that were used for this presentation. And I am going to stop my screen share. And let me take a look at the chat if we have any questions. I see some emails. Great. Please email me for the information. You can private chat me again by going down to that chat box, looking at that downward caret, finding my name of MJP Romito, and then you can type in your email address. If you want to unmute yourself, I see Carol has her hand up. If you do want to unmute yourself to ask a question, please unmute yourself. But this is the end of our presentation. So if there are no more questions, thank you for joining me today. I really do appreciate you being here, especially on this lovely hot day, but it's still a lovely day. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully, okay, is Trish, you're still on. Okay, good. Yes, you won't receive the recording. The recording will take several weeks because it has to take out all of my ums and so forth. So it will be edited and it will be posted on our website. So you can get the recording. I would look for it in another, say, within 2 weeks. But thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for joining me today. Take care, everybody.